We're continuing Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah, Perek Halacha, second half. Yesterday, we had a question of does the Rambam paskin like Abeliezer, who learns from Machon Nesher HaGadol that had to mitzaref le'isur, that if there's not a shiur of a kezayis in the amount eaten without the heter, without that which is permissible, is that what we learned from there? Or not? In the Rambam paskin like Abeliezer, he should be mechayev b'kiseach, even if there's no kezayis b'kdei achilas pras, even if he's eating in normal fashion, because Abeliezer learns the heter, that which is permissible becomes part of the yisur, and therefore any kezayis that will eat will be chayev for it. There is another way to answer. We learned in Nozir, Lamed Zayin Amar Aleph, that when heter is the majority, more than the yisur, we don't say heter mitzarav le'yisur. Thus, the koseach, which is a mixture, which has a small amount of chametz, the Rambam doesn't state that there is a shiur of korban b'kezayis. Just that this is difficult to say because the Rambam writes in Hilchos Naziros, davar muta ein mitzarav ledavar osa ben nozir. He says this only applies to nozir until there will be a kezayis in the actual food. That only by nozir there has to be a kezayis isur within the time of eating 3 bayim of heter. But by other isurim, even if there's not a kezayis, such as begimel bayim, within the begimel bayim of heter, then the heter would add to the isur, even though the heter is the majority. Thus, we must conclude that the Rambam did not have the wording of what we have in Masechta Nozir, the chinofish heter, when the heter is the majority, we don't say heter mitzarav le'isur. The Kesef Mishnah states that he believes he saw in the Rashba these words added benozir, and they're not from the original text of the Gemara, but they're the Rabbanan Savroi. After the Gemara was finished between the Gaonim and the Amoraim, there were Rabbanan Savroi who prepared the text of the Mishnah of the Gemara, and they sometimes added words. Thus, we further have the question of why there's no chiyuv koris when he eats kezayis of the taruvas, because you should say that the heter should add to the chometz, and since he ate a kezayis, he should be chayev. Furthermore, the Kesef Mishnah asks, how does the Rambam paskin in the Naziros, not like Rav Avu? Avu said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that every isur atorah, you do not say heter mitzarav le'isur, except for nozir, because there's a specific posuk in the Torah called mishras anovim, any type of mixture, that even if there's no shiur, as long as there's kezayis eaten which has a mixture of some pash of anovim, and then you're chayav, but only by nozir. And even Ziri, who comes to add to Rabbi Yochanan's words, doesn't disagree with him. And so then how can we say that the Rambam paskins that benozir, you don't say heter mitzarav le'isur, when it would seem you learn from kol machmetzes, kol mishras anovim, that heter is mitzarav le'isur. Therefore, the Kesef Mishnah wants to say that the Rambam learned that the conclusion of the Gemara in Nozir Lamed Zayin Amar Aleph is that Mishras comes to tell us a din of tam ki'ikra. Not that heter mitzarav le'isur, that which is permissible is considered part of the measure of the osur, but rather tam ki'ikra, whether taste is if you have the actual thing. Not that heter is mitzarav le'isur. Tam ki'ikra, what does it mean? That when there's isa mixed with something and it gives it a tam, that's what causes it all to be osur, not because of you adding the heter. According to Rabbi Yochanan, a person would be like it. And what's the shiur hatam? It's kezayis isa b'kdei achilas pras heter. And even in Bekodshim, he says we do not therefore say heter mitzaref le'isa. Because we don't have a pasuk for it. We're learning tam ki'ika. And even though the Gemara in Psochim, Memheyam and Aleph, says that heter mitzaref le'isa, still the Rambam paskins, like at the end of the Gemara in Nozah, that you don't say heter mitzaref le'isa, you only say tam ki'ika. Now we understand why the Rambam by Chometz it says you're liable only when there's a kazayis b'kdei achilus pras, because you don't say heter mitzaref le'isa, and it doesn't give the taste that would make it also. The Ramban's question that since the rule is by Uli Surim, the Tam Ki'ika, why does the Rambam have to learn that it's forbidden to eat the Kazayas Chometz B'Taruvis from a posik? Why do I need it for? If we say Tam Ki'ika, then we don't need a posik. You go Loichel Machmetzes, whatever you eat. You do need it, because Koseach, people don't eat the Koseach, it's a dip as we said before, and therefore when he eats it alone, I would say he's poto, because like the Chachomim, somebody who eats it is not normal, he's not acting the way people eat it. Therefore the positive of Kol Oichel Machmetzes comes to teach us that by Chometz, like Rabbi Eliezer, that even he does something which is not normal, and he drinks the Koseach, he's potter from chorus, but he's still over on alav or kol, and that's why he transgresses on eating it, even though you normally would not transgress. That's the first answer of the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef Mishnah has a second answer. That you need, even according to the Rabbanon, the question, the positive kol oichel machmetzes, which he said we shouldn't need it because tam ki iker. Because when it says ki kol oichel chometz, I would learn from that only chometz if you eat it, but mixture should be bought from chorus. And I would think it's totally permissible. The kol oichel machmetzes comes to tell you there's a lav, and here is one of the areas where chometz is different than other yisurim, because somebody eats a mixture of other yisurim, he's chayav chorus, like it says in Machon Nesher. If you have a kazayis b'kdei achilus pras, he would be loike, and he's still chayav chorus. And chometz, since it says kol oichel machmetzes, he tells you that it's a separate issur, only a lav and not a chayav chorus. Therefore, we conclude that according to the first answer of the Beis Yosef in the Kesef Mishnah, he's not chayav chorus on eating kriseach, even when it's a mixture that has kazayis chometz b'kdei achilus pras, because it's not in the normal fashion of eating. The posuk comes to tell us that still you get malchus, even though he ate it in the non-normal fashion. And according to the second teretz, even when he eats the mixture of chometz in the normal fashion, even if it has a kazayis b'kdei achilus prat, it's still no longer chayav b'koros. It only has malchus because we learn it from a separate posuk. The Kesef Mishnah now adds to explain. The Belez v'Rabbanon disagree in two dinim, two separate aspects. One, taruvis that has a kazayis b'kdei achilus pras, and he ate it in normal fashion, is according to the Rachomim, the whole tam ki'ika, like by Nozer, it would be chayav koretz, because they do not learn, they do not derive, comes to minimize. Rabbi Eliezer, even though he eats it geder achilosoi, he's potter mikoris because it says ki kol oichel chometz, only chometz is chayav koris, but not a mixture of chometz. Secondly, when there is no kazayis within this period of time of achilas pras, because it's a dip, he can only imbibe or take into his body a kazayis when he swallows it, which is not customary. Rabbi Eliezer, it's also balav, because it says kol oichel machmetzes to add it. And going to the Achom, he's poto, because he's not acting in a normal fashion. Thus, the Rambam, who is of the opinion that if he doesn't eat a kazayis and he eats the taruvis like in normal fashion, or he has a kazayis but he's eating it in a non-normal fashion, halacha is kabbaleza, and that's why he's chayav alav, But when he doesn't have a kezayis b'kdei achilus pras, even if he drinks it, even though it's also b'achila, just like any other isur, like chedev, you can't eat a half a kezayis, even though you're not liable, chorus, only for entire kezayis. It's a chatzi shiur, that's also minat Torah. Still, you would not get loy malchus. And what he paskins in Machon Nesher that by other isurim, if there is a kezayis b'kdei achilus pras, he gets malchus. He writes that malchus specifically, but chorus you won't, because even though Mashar Yisurim he holds tam ki'ika, Rambam is of the opinion that Shar Yisurim is different from Chametz, because Chametz is a separate minimizer of Kol Echol Chametz. Only the Chiyuv of chorus is only if you eat actual Chametz. In the mixture is learned from Kol Echol Machmetz, is that which is a mixture or has within it Chometz, and there's only a lav. Mishras is mentioned by Nozir to be Mechayev Malchus, because one cannot learn from Chometz that a Nozir should be Chayev, and the posing that is needed to tell us that by Nozir one would be liable, because by Isa Koris, you have to have a special posting to tell us that you get Malchus on the Taruvis. But Benozia, that you never have Koris, there's never anything more than a lav. So Mishras comes to tell you, it has to come to tell you that there's a lav, because otherwise what is it forbidding? It's just to include even a mixture into of grape in an item of food is also to a nausea. And according to these three terutzim of the Kesef Mishnah, the Rambam paskins kirabelezer, and not like the Rae Gann who paskins like Rachomer. Now the Kesef Mishnah continues here, and he goes into the Divrei Rav Magid, but since it's not applicable and we don't have an answer for it at the end, we will continue on in the next shiur in Halacha Zayin.